Chap 176, Malevolent Demon Saint. Ji Xianchen looked at the crimson eye in the thundercloud, his heart beating faster. A voice in his head was telling him to run. Feng Liang was also frightened and broke out in cold sweat. The demon kings were relieved. It was a senior of the demons. Senior, these two slaughtered our demons. You have to support us. Countless demons died in their hands. Senior, kill them quickly. Exactly. Several demon kings shouted in unison. The crimson eye suddenly glanced at them. Immediately after, a violent gust of wind stirred, and several demon kings were swept up into the sky. They struggled, but it was useless. They were quickly sucked into the crimson eye. Feng Liang and Ji Xianchen were stunned. What was going on? The crimson eye closed. Feng Liang immediately turned around and fled. Ji Xianchen followed closely behind. The two of them flew extremely quickly and vanished into the horizon in the blink of an eye. The dark clouds in the sky covered an extremely far distance, as if the entire demon realm was covered by them. A terrifying pressure filled the world. Didn't you say that the strongest in the demon realm is only at the Mahayana realm? Why did you run away? Feng Liang said angrily. Didn't you promise to protect me? Ji Xianchen's expression darkened. He gritted his teeth and said, the other party is from the upper world. I'm only invincible in the mortal world. If an enemy comes from above, how can I fight? Feng Liang fell silent and could only fly forward. Where are you trying to escape to? The cold voice came from behind. Feng Liang and Ji Xianchen's expressions changed drastically as a strong gust of wind blew. Feng Liang subconsciously turned his head and was sent flying by the strong wind. He vomited blood and fell into the wilderness below, stirring up dust. Ji Xianchen turned around and raised his hands. Thunder exploded and filled the world. He knew that he couldn't escape. He would fight. Humph. Cao Cao can kill the immortals of the upper world, so why can't I? Ji Xianchen gritted his teeth and looked over. A burly demon with the head of a tiger and the body of a human stepped on the demonic clouds. The claws of this demon were like that of a monkey, its tail was like that of a cow, and there were wings on its back. It was extremely strange. Ji Xianchen frowned and thought to himself, is it the fusion of those demon kings? He couldn't help but feel disgusted. This demon senior was so cruel to his own kind. He had even said that he wanted to stand up for the demons. Now, it seemed that the other party was coming for the two of them. The Black Fox Demon Emperor indeed had the support of the upper world. Sir, aren't you going to tell me your name? Ji Xianchen shouted. The burly fiendish demon snorted. How can a mortal know my name? He slapped his palm at Ji Xianchen, causing terrifying dermic powers to transform into countless blood arrows. Lightning wrapped around Ji Xianchen's body. He wanted to block, but in the blink of an eye, he was pierced by countless blood arrows and turned into a bloody figure. He couldn't resist at all. Lying in the crater in the wasteland, Feng Liang widened his eyes in disbelief. Although Ji Xianchen was very pretentious, Feng Liang really admired his strength. Almost no demon king could withstand a single blow from him. Seeing that Ji Xianchen had been beaten instantly, Feng Liang panicked. What should I do? Feng Liang propped himself up with his sword and looked up. The burly demon looked down at him, his eyes flickering as he thought to himself, this child actually has the providence of the heavenly Tao. Could he be the son of heaven and earth of that mortal world? He flew towards Feng Liang but did not attack. At this moment, the rolling lightning turned into a torrent that swept over. The burly fiendish demon waved his hand and dispersed the lightning torrent. Already transformed into a bloody man, Ji Xianchen rushed towards the burly demon. The burly demon snorted disdainfully and waved his right hand. Boom! A huge sword condensed from blood chi descended from the sky, piercing through the thunderclouds and directly suppressing Ji Xianchen. The blade landed on the wasteland, raising thousands of feet of dust. It was unknown if Ji Xianchen was still alive. Feng Liang gritted his teeth as his eyes turned red. He suddenly recalled the mysterious mystical power his grandmaster had taught him. Couldn't use it unless it was a critical moment. This was a critical moment. Feng Liang knelt on the ground and started to cast a spell with both hands. The burly demon noticed his actions but did not care. Instead, he said, if you want to live, kowtow to me. Fang Liang felt insulted and trembled. The distant blood sword dissipated into blood qi.as Fang Liang cast the spell. A black crack appeared behind him. It began to spin in midair, forming a vortex. The burly demon narrowed his eyes. Was this a summoning technique? He secretly laughed. What could this mortal summon? He continued walking towards him. Fang Liang's remaining spirit energy was exhausted. He didn't know what was happening behind him and thought that the mystical power had failed. What's going on? Why isn't this a powerful mystical power? Fang Liang panicked. Could Grand Master have lied to him? No, impossible. He must have not cultivated the technique well. Fang Liang recalled how he had practiced this mystical power the fastest when he first learned it. He was filled with regret. It wasn't that he cultivated the fastest, but that he didn't succeed at all. Seeing the burly fiendish demon approaching, Fang Liang felt despair. He gripped his sword, prepared to die. A familiar voice came from behind. You can't be afraid of anyone other than me. Fang Liang was thunderstruck. Subconsciously turning around, he widened his eyes. Hanju slowly stepped out of the black vortex. His expression was indifferent. The 9-5 Supreme Providence robe fluttered in the wind. His Dharma treasures shone like an immortal descending to the mortal world. Hanju glanced at Ji Xianchen. He still had a trace of life. He looked at the burly demon. Grand Unity Earth Immortal. No wonder Ji Xianchen couldn't block it. The burly demon looked at Hanju in surprise. What a low cultivation level. No, he has hidden his cultivation. The burly fiendish demon said, I am. Hanju suddenly raised his right index finger and shot out a sword aura. Heaven Earth Mystic Yellow World Piercing Sword Finger. Boom! The sword chi transformed into a long rainbow and flew past Fang Liang's head. At this moment, Fang Liang's soul stopped trembling and his expression froze. Before he could turn his head, the burly demon was killed. The sword chi flashed all the way and drew a deep ravine in the wasteland. It was like a valley that stretched to the end of the world. Who are you? The burly demon's voice was filled with fear. The body just now was not his true body. Hanju said calmly, Heavenly Court, Wenxuxing. Impossible. How can the Heavenly Court interfere in this matter? Don't lie. Hanju couldn't be bothered to reply. He raised his hand and pointed. Sword chi tore through the sky. The dark clouds were penetrated, and the vast pressure that enveloped the world dissipated. Malevolent demon saint has developed hatred towards you. Current hatred points, 5 stars. This line of words appeared in front of Hanju, Wenxuxing. Just you wait. Do you really think that the Heavenly Court can act recklessly? I will definitely destroy it. The other party roared. Hanju frowned. How arrogant. Could it be someone powerful? He hurriedly checked the Malevolent Demon Saint's information. Malevolent Demon Saint, Mid-Stage Grand Unity Heaven Immortal Realm. A demon saint in the immortal world who has developed hatred towards you because you stopped him from capturing the Son of Heaven and Earth. Current hatred points, 5 stars, that's it? Chapter 177 Golden Crow's Breakthrough, Chu Shuren's Obsession. After sensing that malevolent demon saint's aura had completely dissipated, Hanju approached Fang Liang and healed him. Fang Liang was both surprised and ashamed. He carefully asked, Grandmaster, why are you here? Hanju replied, the mystical power I taught you is a summoning technique. Don't tell anyone about this, including your master. Fang Liang was enlightened. His admiration for Hanju was like an endless river. It was indescribable. Hanju raised his hand and sucked Ji Xianchen over. Under the treatment of his heaven immortal dermic powers, their injuries quickly recovered. Fortunately, their essence souls were not injured. Malevolent demon saint did not seem to want to kill them. Hanju couldn't be bothered to think about the demon saint's plot. He would deal with it using the Book of Misfortune when he returned. Ji Xianchen looked at him with a complicated expression and asked, You're already an immortal. Why can you stay in the mortal world? Hanju smiled teasingly. If you acknowledge me as your master, I'll teach you. Ji Xianchen turned his head away. He couldn't help but ponder. Hanju was indeed much stronger than his master, but emotionally, he couldn't accept it. He had always treated Hanju as his brother and competitor. Go back as soon as possible. The demon realm is not so easily bullied. Hanju stood up and walked into the black crack, returning to the connate cave abode. He could only enter this crack. If Ji Xianchen and Feng Liang followed, they would be lost in the void without the connection of the invocation technique. After Hanju left, Feng Liang and Ji Xianchen fell silent. Feng Liang smiled teasingly. Who's the number one in the world? Let's go back. Otherwise, that fellow will come back and find trouble with yous again. The two of them immediately stood up and left. Along the way, they discussed Hanju's strength. After returning to the connate cave abode, Hanju took out the Book of Misfortune and began cursing malevolent demon saint. A grand unity heaven immortal could be called a demon saint in the upper world. From the looks of it, a demon saint was not very strong, Hanju thought silently. Dao Comprehension Sword asked curiously, Master, where did you go just now? Why do you have little Liang's aura on you? Hanju replied, I went to save him. This kid was together with Ji Xianchen and was almost beaten to death. Look, it's very dangerous outside. Don't go out. Dao Comprehension Sword frowned. Feng Liang was already very strong, and Ji Xianchen was even the number one in the world. The two of them were almost beaten to death even when working together. It seemed that she really couldn't go to the outside world. Dao Comprehension Sword perked up and continued cultivating. Hanju cursed as he observed Chu Shuren under the Fusong tree. This fellow didn't cultivate after coming up the mountain. Crazy. If he doesn't cultivate, why is he here to become my disciple? It was strange. The reincarnation of Buddha actually cultivated the Tao. He was probably a traitor. The Buddhist sect wanted to take drastic measures against the Tao sect. Hanju had always been observing Chu Shuren and did not dare to nurture him easily. Should I ask my good brother about the Supreme Buddha? Hanju felt that it was feasible. He would ask next time. After all, Chu Shuren didn't want to cultivate. When he was about to die of old age, he would definitely be anxious. Thinking of Chu Shuren, Hanju thought of Sun Chang'an. This ugly monk, it had been so many years. Why hadn't he returned? It's a pity that my grand disciple has to suffer every day. Ever since he had gone out with Sun Chang'an, Morongqi had been attacked countless times and had been severely injured. Compared to Sun Chang'an, Hanju's heart ached for Morongqi. Morongqi was good, cheerful, and had respect for this grandmaster. Sun Chang'an was autistic all the time and would think of Qianer whenever he wanted to. Hanju even wanted to expel him from the sect. However, considering that this was a curse from the divine Buddha, he could only endure. It was unknown how long it would take for Sun Chang'an to escape this calamity. This fellow definitely couldn't rely on himself. When Hanju reached the same level as the divine Buddha, he would personally break the curse. Thinking of this, Hanju shook his head and laughed. 13 years later, under the Fusong tree, Chu Shuren was already old. He had white hair and a thin figure. He leaned against a tree trunk and looked at the sky with a blank expression. Yang Tiandong opened his eyes and frowned. This kid, hey, kid, how many more years can you live? Do you have any unfulfilled wishes? The black-haired chicken asked with a smile. It was only joking. Chu Shuren was a Foundation Establishment realm cultivator, after all. It wasn't difficult for him to live for nearly 200 years. It was just that he hadn't taken the youth retaining pill, so he looked old. The three-headed Wyrm king laughed mockingly. His wish is probably very difficult to fulfill. He wants the world to give up cultivating. I even suspect that he's a spy sent by the demons. Hearing this, Chu Shuren suddenly turned around and said in a low voice, only if the people of the world give up on cultivating can the order of reincarnation return to normal. As for the demons, the heavenly Tao will not tolerate them when the time comes. We can only control our own actions. Tu Linger asked, then why did you cultivate to the Foundation Establishment realm? I'm doing this for the great kindness Dermic Tao. Hypocrite. You, Chu Shuren was about to explode in anger. Ever since he had arrived at the Cultivate diligently become Immortal Mountain, his good temper had been worn out. These people were too despicable. Not only did they not agree with him, but they also kept mocking him. At this moment, the door to the connate cave abode opened and Hanju and Dao Comprehension Sword walked out. Upon seeing him, everyone stood up and bowed. Chu Shuren was stunned. This was the first time he saw Hanju. What a handsome face. He had thought that deity-slaying elder was an old man. Hanju walked in front of the fusong tree and looked up at the two golden crows. Can you break through? Ada nodded and said, yes, but we're afraid of being expelled by the heavenly Tao, so we didn't dare to. Hanju threw out 2 heaven-evading stones, one of which was given to him by Deliverman Yang. With these 2 stones, you won't have to transcend the tribulation. As long as you don't leave this mountain in the future, you won't be expelled by the heavenly Tao. Hearing this, the 2 golden crows were overjoyed. They hurriedly bit on the heaven-evading stone and started cultivating. The others immediately understood something. Hanju had long surpassed the mortal world. He had relied on those 2 stones to stay in the mortal world. Hanju looked at the 3-headed Wyrm king and waved his right hand. He handed the abyss yellow dragon's soul to him and said, this is the soul of a true dragon. Its consciousness has been erased by me. After you devour it, your bloodline should be able to transform. You don't have to worry about being possessed. The 3-headed Wyrm king was pleasantly surprised and hurriedly kowtowed to Hanju. Chu was stunned. Hanju deliberately provoked him. You want to persuade me to give up cultivating? I'll help others become stronger in front of you. Young Tiandong, Tu Linger, the black hell chicken, and the chaotic heavenly dog looked at him expectantly. Hanju said angrily, your cultivation is so low. Why are you looking at me? Let's talk when you're close to the peak of the mortal world. Tao Comprehension Sword followed suit. That's right, that's right. None of you are cultivating properly. Hanju turned around and returned to his cave abode. Chu Shuren hurriedly ran over, knelt behind him, and shouted, Grandmaster, please take the lead and give up cultivating. Young Tiandong almost peed his pants when he heard that. He rushed over and kicked him to the ground. What nonsense are you saying? Young Tiandong shouted, trembling in anger, this kid is really daring. He really dared to persuade Hanju. Hanju turned his head and looked at Chu Shuren from the corner of his eye. Anyone in this world can persuade others to give up cultivating, but you can't. Chu Shuren got up and wiped the blood from his mouth, asking, why? He stared at Hanju without fear. Chapter 178 Mysterious Red Stone, the Stronger Hanju. You don't cultivate, so how do you know that cultivation is the greatest obstacle towards peace? Hanju turned around and stared at him. Chu Shuren said, power represents injustice. The greatest power of mortals is imperial authority. The greatest power in the world is cultivation. If everyone in the world was immortal, there would be no need to pursue cultivation. If everyone was equal, how could there be a difference in strength? Hanju asked, if everyone in the world was mortal and some people were born without limbs, not being able to experience the joy of ordinary people, would the world really be fair? Are you pursuing a numb world without fighting, or a paradise where everyone laughs? Paradise. Chu Shuren was stunned. He subconsciously replied, of course I want a paradise where everyone laughs. There are always people who want to live forever. If you can't live forever, you can't laugh. How are you going to change such people? Hanju continued to ask. The others listened carefully. They could feel his Tao heart from his words. Chu Shuren said, I will lead them to seek other forms of joy. On what basis? What do you mean? On what basis are you allowed to change other people's ambitions? What right do you have? If you do, why can't you say that those who want to bully you and those who like to do evil have the right to do the same? Because they are wrong. How can you be sure that they are wrong? They are wrong because you think so? Or did the heavenly Tao personally tell you that they are wrong? In the end, you only want the world to listen to you. You want to make the world look like the world you want. I don't. Actually, you're not wrong. Hanju changed his tone and smiled strangely. Chu Shuren was stunned. He thought that Hanju was going to scold him. This twist was too fast. Hanju said, if your cultivation is the strongest, won't you be able to create the world you want? Chu Shuren was silent. You clearly have excellent talent. Is it easy to cultivate, or is it easy to convince everyone in the world? You only have less than 200 years of life. How many people have you convinced until now? Hanju's words were like a knife piercing into Chu Shuren's heart. He had advised many cultivators, but no one was convinced. Hanju suddenly asked, "Do you believe in Buddhism or Tao?" The cultivation world in this mortal world focused on the Tao sect. Buddhism cultivation techniques were rare and could even be said to be extinct. However, Buddhism was very popular among mortals. The people of many dynasties were Buddhist followers. Chu Shuren replied, "Of course I believe in Tao. I believe in the great kindness dharmic Tao and that the world is inherently good." Hanju said meaningfully, "I wonder if you can stay true to yourself." "I won't change. Otherwise, I'll burn my bones and scatter my ashes. My soul will disperse and I'll never reincarnate." Chu Shuren promised with a determined expression. Hanju didn't know the Buddhist's intention and didn't say anything else as he walked back to his cave abode. Tao Comprehension Sword followed closely behind him. Young Tiandong pulled Chu Shuren aside and started teaching him a lesson. Still in a daze, Chu Shuren thought about Hanju's words. Was what he wanted really the right thing? If one wanted the world to give up on cultivation, one had to cultivate first. They had to become the strongest before changing the world. What was this? A total hypocrite. Chu Shuren was completely confused. For the next 10 years, the two golden crows broke through to the loose immortal realm one after another. Hanju strictly ordered them not to leave the Cultivate diligently become immortal mountain, or they would be expelled by the heavenly Tao. The others were curious. Why did the Cultivate diligently become immortal mountain had the ability to resist the heavenly Tao? In these 10 years, Chu Shuren still did not cultivate. He sat under the tree every day, thinking about something. Hanju was focused on cultivating, but he was still far from the mid-stage of the reincarnation heaven immortal realm. He had accumulated for more than 20 years already. Cultivating at the heaven immortal realm was much more difficult than cultivating at the earth immortal realm. It could even be said that the difference was vast. No wonder Zhang Guxing said that it was best to become a grand unity heaven immortal before coming out to roam the world. Everyone below grand unity heaven immortal was an ant. Of course, a heaven immortal was only a slightly larger ant. Hanju saw that the immortal emperor was killed by the divine general, causing him to think that even if he became an immortal emperor, he couldn't act recklessly. Besides, even though the divine general was impressive, he was still trapped by the enemy. Perhaps only by reaching the illusory zenith heaven golden immortal realm could he truly transcend. Hanju opened his eyes and took out the Book of Misfortune to relax. He had been cultivating his entire life and needed some entertainment to go along with it. The first to be cursed was the malevolent demon saint. He had to cause trouble for this fellow. Several months later, Xing Hongxian returned. The first thing she did after returning was to find him. Hanju sensibly chased Tao Comprehension's sword out of the cave abode, causing the grass spirit to be very dissatisfied. "Where's my senior sister?" Hanju asked. If Chang Yue returned, she would definitely come to see him. Xing Hongxian replied, "We parted ways after returning to Great Yen. She said she wanted to go back to her hometown." She has a hometown? Who knows? I don't care about her. Husband, look. What treasure is this? Xing Hongxian opened her right hand, revealing a strange red stone. Hanju took it and looked. Other than the color, this red stone looked like an ordinary stone. He used his divine sense to probe and discovered a strange aura inside the red stone. Even he, who was at the reincarnation heaven immortal realm, could not see through it. Another treasure. Hanju was secretly shocked. This girl was too lucky. He asked cautiously, "Where did you find this stone?" Xing Hongxian replied, "It fell from the sky and almost hit me. I took a look. How can a stone that fell from the sky be so simple?" A treasure fell from the sky again. The heaven-evading stone from before had also fallen from the sky. Hanju didn't believe that it was a coincidence. There had to be a reason. Somehow, a pair of eyes was spying on him. "Don't think about it. It's been so long. I missed you." Xing Hongxian smiled and started to help him take off his clothes. Hanju sighed helplessly. "So urgent?" "Of course. I miss you every day. Is my heavenly puppet still intact?" Pfft, I just talked to it. I didn't do anything weird. Let's play a new game today. What new game? Listen to my commands. A month later, Xing Hongxian left in satisfaction. Dao Comprehension's sword watched her leave with gritted teeth. Her body was filled with the scent of her master. It was too strong. Dao Comprehension's sword doubted her life. She accompanied her master every day. Why couldn't he be so close to her? Once Xing Hongxian returned, she could immediately. Inside the connate cave abode, Hanju was playing with the red stone and comparing it with the heaven-evading stone in his left hand. After looking for a long time, he still did not understand. He stopped thinking about it and started cultivating again. Perhaps when his cultivation level increased to a certain level, he would be able to see through the red stone. 3 years later, Hanju was still cultivating, when he suddenly felt a force trying to pull his consciousness away. Although it was not strong, he remembered this force. Qi Yunxian. Hanju relaxed and let Qi Yunxian bring his consciousness into a vast starry sky. Qi Yunxian was only at the early stage Grand Unity Heaven Immortal Realm. Hanju had already caught up. In terms of true strength, Hanju was definitely stronger than him. Seeing Qi Yunxian again, Hanju sighed. Back then, he felt that Qi Yunxian was very strong and mighty. Now, he felt that it was nothing much. Chapter 179 Mid-stage of the Reincarnation Heaven Immortal Realm, Impending Great Calamity. Qi Yunxian was the first to speak. The forces behind the demon saint are about to compromise. Once the heavenly court executes the demon saint, they will quickly clean up the mortal world. Many immortals have already noticed you. With the help of the system's concealment function, Qi Yunxian didn't know that Hanju's cultivation had already caught up to him. Hanju nodded and said, "Thank you for the reminder." Previously, a large group of immortal gods had a favorable impression and hatred towards him. This meant that the immortal gods had also agreed to his plan to prove his talent. According to Zhang Guxing, the strongest heavenly generals in the mortal world were no stronger than the Grand Unity Heaven Immortal Realm. Hanju naturally didn't feel much pressure. "You seem to have offended the giant spiritual martial god. He's the leader of the heavenly generals who will clean up the mortal world," Qi Yunxian continued. Hanju wasn't surprised. The cultivation of the giant spiritual martial god was at the perfected Grand Unity Heaven Immortal Realm. He was not invincible. Hanju frowned and said, "I don't know who giant spiritual martial god is. Previously, a heavenly general came to find trouble with me. His name was Yang San." Qi Yunxian came to a realization and said, "So that's how it is. Yang San is a subordinate of the giant spiritual martial god. His position is not high, but he's well liked by the giant spiritual martial god. However, speaking of which, Yang San has descended into the mortal world without permission. This is against the heavenly rules. I must report this matter." Hanju smiled and didn't say anything. Qi Yunxian was only informing him. In the end, he was not very firm. Otherwise, why would he allow his mortal world to be cleaned up? By the way, have you heard of the Supreme Buddha? Hanju suddenly asked. Supreme Buddha? I've heard that there are 5 great Buddhas in the Buddhist sect. The Supreme Buddha is very famous. It's mainly because he betrayed the Buddhist sect. He actually persuaded them to give up cultivating. How ridiculous, Qi Yunxian replied. He wanted to laugh at the mention of this. Hanju asked in surprise, "Why?" "Who knows? I keep having the feeling that the Buddhists are up to something." Hanju fell into deep thought. If what Qi Yunxian said was true, then Shushurin might not have been planted by the Buddhists. Their ideals were truly conflicting. He had such a disciple, he would definitely send him to the enemy. Perhaps this was the reason why Shushurin practiced the Tao. After the matter with the demon saint is over, I will be transferred away. At that time, I won't be able to help you. If you regret it, it's still not too late. I can help introduce you to the heavenly court." Qi Yunxian stared at Hanju seriously. Hanju shook his head and said, "I haven't regretted it yet. Thank you for your kind intentions." The two of them did not chat for long. Hanju's consciousness returned to his body. He took out the Book of Misfortune and started cursing giant spiritual martial god. After all, he was a perfected grand unity heaven immortal. Hanju had to do anything to injure him. Ever since the Cultivate diligently become immortal mountain became a Tao field, the spirit chi increased by 5 times. Everyone on the mountain began to cultivate faster. After the 3-headed Wyrm king consumed the soul of the abyssal yellow dragon, his bloodline began to transform towards that of a true dragon. However, before he completely transformed into a true dragon, he grew 2 more dragon heads and became a 5-headed Wyrm king. Not only that, but his cultivation level had also reached the 8th level of the Mahayana realm. The cultivation levels of the others also increased steadily. The weakest Yang Tiandong also began to fight for the Void Amalgamation realm. After Xing Hongxian and Fairy Shixian returned, they discovered that the spirit chi on the mountain had increased. They no longer went out to adventure and also entered seclusion. When the spirit chi reached a certain level, even the weakest potential could become immortal. Of course, the Cultivate diligently become immortal mountain had yet to reach that level. Another 10 years passed. Feng Liang returned. He first visited Hanju, then returned to the Fusang tree to cultivate. Hanju noticed that he was a little lonely and didn't mention the saintess. It seemed like this fellow had suffered an emotional setback. Hanju didn't mind. Since Feng Liang was unwilling to speak, why should he ask? He clicked on interpersonal relationships and checked his emails. Your good friend Mo Fuzhou has left the mortal world. Your Dao companion Xian Qingjun has attained the Grand Unity Dao fruit and become a Grand Unity Earth Immortal. Your disciple Su Qi spread bad luck. The providence of your enemy, the Black Fox Demon Emperor, has declined. His lifespan has decreased by 3,000 years. Your disciple Morong Qi was attacked by demon beasts, X178930. Your good friend Zhou Fan was attacked by your grand disciple Morong Qi and was severely injured. Fortunately, the mighty figure saved him. Your disciple Sun Chang'an has obtained the blessing of the world. His providence has increased greatly. Mo Fuzhou left the mortal world. Hanju frowned. Was the devil race playing tricks? I'll ask Mo Zhu later. Hanju noticed that Zhou Fan was attacked by Morong Qi. What was going on? Zhou Fan was too pitiful. Hanju suddenly felt heartache. Although Zhou Fan was arrogant and had a deep vengeance to settle, Hanju's impression of him had never decreased. He had died several times. It was normal that he couldn't defeat Morong Qi now. He didn't know why the two of them had a conflict. Hanju looked at it for a while before connecting his divine sense to Mo Zhu's heavenly puppet. At this moment, Mo Zhu was meditating in a temple alone. Where did Mo Fuzhou go? Hanju's voice sounded. Mo Zhu immediately opened her eyes. This wasn't the first time Hanju contacted her through the heavenly puppet, so she wasn't shocked, only happy. She hurriedly took out the heavenly puppet and replied, several years ago, he said that he sensed an opportunity and wanted to go out alone. We don't know where he went. Mo Fuzhou, Mo Yuling, and Mo Zhu had found many disciples of the Mo family in the past few hundred years. After reuniting, they had left the mortal world. The Mo family already had more than 1,000 disciples, and they could be considered to have risen again. However, the entire world was chasing after fiendish cultivators, so Mo Zhu didn't dare to go back and find Hanju. How's your cultivation recently? Hanju asked. Mo Zhu replied, I'm about to break through to the Void Amalgamation realm. She sounded pleased. After inheriting the Mo family's fiendish technique, her cultivation speed was indeed a little fast. The two of them chatted for a while before Hanju cut off his connection with the heavenly puppet. Mo Zhu was in a good mood. After so many years, he still cared about her. I have to cultivate well. I'll ascend with him in the future and accompany him on the path of cultivation. Mo Zhu thought firmly. After so many years, he should have already reached the Mahayana realm. Their cultivation levels were still far apart. 12 years later, Hanju finally reached the mid-stage of the reincarnation heaven immortal realm. He finally felt that his cultivation speed was a little slow. After all, he wasn't just a descendant of an immortal emperor. He also had the spiritual physique of the 6 paths, top-notch talent in the sword Dao, top-notch comprehension, and so on. The Fusang tree, the Earth Immortal Gourd, the Resurrection Lily, heaven and earth grass, and the 9 heavens galaxy water are all still growing. The immortal chi of the cultivate diligently become immortal mountain cannot compare to the upper world. Hanju thought silently, he still had to ascend eventually. After passing the heavenly court's calamity, he should consider ascending. As long as the heavenly court was willing to let go of this mortal world, Hanju would have nothing to worry about. He couldn't join the heavenly court or the divine palace. These two forces would definitely cause trouble. Of course, he didn't have to ascend if he obtained some natural treasures that nurtured immortal chi through the system. Hanju consolidated his cultivation as he thought. On this day, the great Yin welcomed a snowstorm that was rare for hundreds of years. It was even greater than the snowstorm from when Demon King Dian Su woke up. Even the sun was covered by snow. Not only the great Yin but also the other states and dynasties. Hanju felt inexplicably uneasy. The great calamity was coming. As a reincarnation heaven immortal, his premonition was naturally extraordinary. Chapter 180 Destiny Sword Chi Great Wheel, son of the Heavenly Emperor. Under the Fusong tree, Feng Liang looked up at the sky. It was white, with snow filling the sky. Tu Ling muttered, "There's something wrong with the snow." Because the cultivate diligently become immortal mountain was already a Dao field, the snow couldn't fall inside, causing it to become the only mountain that was not covered in snow. The three-headed Wyrm king asked curiously, "What's wrong?" "This snow contains spirit chi," Adi added. The two golden crows also tilted their heads and looked into the sky. Young Tiandong, Chu Shuren, the black hell chicken, and the chaotic heavenly dog were all looking around. At this moment, Hanju and Dao Comprehension Sword walked out of the cave abode and came to the Fusong tree. The heavenly court might be coming, Hanju said softly after sitting down. Heavenly court, everyone was moved. And the legends, the heavenly court was the representative of the immortal gods. Feng Liang had also learned that the heavenly court wanted to clean up the mortal world, so he had a complicated expression. "What do you mean?" Tu Linger was puzzled. Feng Liang immediately explained to everyone. After he finished speaking, everyone's expression changed. Immortal gods wanted to clean up the mortal world. If this was not a calamity, then what was? Hanju said calmly, "I'm prepared to stop the immortals." Everyone looked at him in shock. They all knew that Hanju was very strong, but he was already strong enough to resist the heavenly court. It's impossible for the heavenly court to send out all their forces. They will only send a portion of the heavenly troops. If I can stop them and let the heavenly court see my strength, I will use joining the heavenly court as a condition to exchange for peace in the world. Hanju chuckled. He spoke casually, but his disciples could feel the pressure. The black hell chicken couldn't help but say, "Master, you can already ascend. Why don't you bring us along and run away?" It really felt that Hanju didn't have to fight to the death. Hanju smiled and said, "Let's try. If we can't block it, we can only run." Tu Linger frowned. "Master can run. What should we do?" "Don't worry, I can ascend with this mountain." These words were true. The cultivate diligently become immortal mountain had already become a Dao field that could isolate the heavenly Dao. After they ascended, as long as they didn't leave the cultivate diligently become immortal mountain, they wouldn't be crushed to death by the immortal chi of the immortal world. The three-headed Wyrm king couldn't help but curse. They call themselves immortal gods? They want to clean up the entire mortal world because of suspicion? Why don't they directly attack the devils? I don't believe that the heavenly court can't do it. I feel that this is just a superficial effort. Clearing up the demonic path in the mortal world means we are just sacrifices. He had played such tricks before. When competing with the other demon kings for benefits, the other party might compromise and give him the benefits. However, he had to submit to the masses, so the other party would push out some demons to take the blame instead. And no matter what, it sounded wrong to clean up the mortal world directly. After all, this mortal world was still dominated by the righteous path. The others also felt that heavenly court was too sinister. The chaotic heavenly dog looked at Chushurin and mocked. "If we give up cultivating, we're doomed. We can only wait for the heavenly court to slaughter us." Chu frowned. He was also feeling very uncomfortable. It was indeed, as the chaotic heavenly dog said. If he gave up cultivating, forget about peace, the entire world would be gone. Grandmaster, should we call Master and Senior Brother back? Feng Liang asked. Hanju replied, I already did. He had already informed Sun Chang'an and Morong Qi through the 6 paths insignia. Cultivate well. Try your best to carry my burden as soon as possible. Hanju smiled. Everyone was ashamed. At this point, everyone began to work hard and cultivate with all their might. Chu Shuren seemed to have made up his mind and also started cultivating. His talent stunned everyone. Even Hanju was shocked. In just a short year, he became a golden core. This was cheating. Hanju couldn't help but become curious. How strong was the Supreme Buddha? The 5 great Buddhas were definitely existences stronger than the Divine General. In the blink of an eye, another 14 years passed. Sun Chang'an and Morong Qi returned. Morong Qi seemed to have transformed into a different person. He was full of dominance and had already surpassed the 5th level of the body integration realm. As expected of the reincarnation of the Divine Palace War God, Sun Chang'an was still so helplessly pathetic. It was worth mentioning that Chu Shuren was inexplicably close to Sun Chang'an and always chatted with him. Sun Chang'an liked Chu Shuren very much. He spoke with this fellow disciple nephew even more intimately than with his disciple. He had no choice. After so many years, Morong Qi's patience with him had long been worn out. He didn't respect him at all and even often shouted at him. Hanju felt strange seeing them interact. Sun Chang'an was only a natural treasure nurtured by the Buddhist sect in his previous life, while Chu Shuren was the supreme Buddha. Now, Sun Chang'an had become the Buddha's martial uncle. The relationship tree was in chaos. Ever since Chu Shuren started cultivating, Yang Tiandong became arrogant. Chu Shuren had already reached the nascent soul realm. He had reached the nascent soul realm in 14 years. Feng Liang and Morong Qi were inferior to him. Feng Liang and Morong Qi were also shocked and cultivated even harder. Inside the connate cave abode, Hanju taught Dao Comprehension Sword while cultivating. Dao Comprehension Sword's potential was also very strong. After all, she had obtained the Dao discussion comprehension of an immortal god. Although she couldn't compare to Chu Shuren, she was still much stronger than Yang Tiandong and the Black Hell Chicken. The Heavenly Emperor wants to send his son to the mortal world to deal with you. You have the following choices. 1. Immediately ascend and avoid fighting to the death with the Heavenly Court. You can obtain a random natural treasure. 2. Don't ascend for the time being. Wait for the Heavenly Court to descend into the mortal world. You can obtain a mystical power inheritance and a heavenly Dao Spirit Stone. 3 lines of words suddenly appeared in front of Hanju. He was stunned. Son of the Heavenly Emperor, I can't kill him. It was fine to kill the heavenly troops since the Heavenly Emperor could replace them, but if he killed his son, could he become the Heavenly Emperor's son instead? Hanju frowned. Should he immediately ascend? No. After ascending, Daoist Dan Qing, the vermilion bird, and a bunch of immortals might be waiting for him. Besides, after cultivating for so many years, it was time to show off. After cultivating quietly in a place no one cared about, he would appear out of thin air when everyone wasn't paying attention to him and shock the world. If he couldn't win, he would escape. Hanju made a decision not to ascend. Congratulations on obtaining the mystical power Destiny Sword Qi Great Wheel. Destiny Sword Qi Great Wheel. Sword Dao Mystical Power, Karma Mystical Power. The Sword Qi can create a karmic wheel. All things will be sucked in and their fate will be severed. Their bodies and souls will be destroyed completely. Congratulations on obtaining a heavenly Dao Spirit Stone. In a dark hall, the door suddenly opened, and a blinding golden light expelled the darkness. The majestic Heavenly Emperor flew into the hall, his divine might spreading vastly. A silver-armored man who was cultivating in the main hall opened his eyes, immediately stood up and knelt down to the Heavenly Emperor. He looked so tiny in front of the Heavenly Emperor. However, there was a hint of arrogance between his brows. His entire aura was filled with confidence. The Heavenly Emperor looked down at him and said, Shoner, the matter of the demon saint has come to an end. After the heavenly punishment is over, I want you to descend into the mortal world and clean it up. A prodigy has appeared in this world. He has probably reached the heaven immortal realm. You have to do your best. This silver-armored man was called Long Shan, and he was the son of the heavenly emperor. His mother was from the true dragon race, and he had been cultivating in the heavenly court. Long Shan asked in surprise, why didn't he ascend with such a cultivation level? An immortal emperor once threw a heavenly Tao stone into the mortal world, and it was obtained by him. Perhaps this child is related to that immortal emperor. Fight with your full strength. There's no need to hold back. Can I kill him? Yes.